Some say it's an urban myth, but I think it's happening to me. Never in my wildest dreams, or nightmares really, would I have ever thought that this could actually happen to me. How could this happen to anyone? When you start to get followed by a person, a stranger that appears everywhere you go and just smiles at you. It's an uncanny feeling of impending doom. It's that voice in your head screaming at you that something just isn't quite right. It's the intuition that kicks in and desperately pleads with your brain, telling you, you gotta get out of here, man. Run, run, run as fast as you can. But what am I even running from? Delusions? Hallucinations? Or something much more real and much more sinister? Everywhere I go, there it is, smiling at me in the corner. Everywhere I look, there it is, smiling at me in the distance. Every time I turn my head, there it is, smiling at me again and again and again. When I close my eyes, there it is, burnt into my brain, smiling at me from behind my eyelids. When I go to sleep at night, there it is, smiling at me in my dreams. And it's not always the same person. And I don't even know if it's real anymore. In fact, I'm starting to think it's not real, and that it's just a figment of my deranged imagination, or a part of my fricked up subconscious. It was when I was visiting a friend at work that I first noticed it. A woman smiling menacingly at me in the corner of his office. "Who's that?" I texted him from my phone. He looked up from his phone notification and laughed. "What are you talking about?" I was so confused I took a picture on my phone to send him discreetly, but the photo was empty. Just an office wall with no one standing there. I couldn't believe my eyes. I slapped myself across the face, pinched myself, thinking I was losing the ability to tell what was real and what wasn't. What if I walked over to her and touched her? Would I feel her there? Or would my hand just go through her? I was starting to really lose my cool. Couldn't focus on anything but the woman in the corner. And the woman continued to stare, and I swear she was looking right into the depths of my soul, her smile growing more evil with each passing moment. I couldn't stand looking at her, but at the same time I could not look away. It was enchanting almost, like the siren's cry that lures in the sailor, only to devour the soul of the fool foolish enough to be drawn to it. "I need to go," I said before quickly rushing out to the parking lot. I had to get out of there as fast as I could. I didn't even really know why, I just knew I had to leave. When I reached my car and got into the driver's seat, the woman appeared again from 2 parking spaces over. The same stare. The same smile. The fire danced along the living room with a spectacle of shadows. They reminded me of a Broadway play, but no two characters were very similar. I watched the second act unfold briefly before returning to my book and diving into the tales of my favorite author, Robert Clemson. I could feel the soft weight of my cat on top of my blanket, warming my chest behind the words held in my hands. At this moment, life felt good. I cracked open the pages and flipped to the dedications. It said, "To you, dear reader." I thought of how lovely that sounded. Clemson was always such a humble author in his success. The story begins with a man gazing into the window of a home. The man was described as wearing clothing that matched the darkest parts of his mind. His face, lit solely by the fireplace inside, held a grim expression. The knife in his hand was raised with a grave intention as he peered in on his victim. That's when he tapped on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. My cat leapt from my chest, startling me in the worst way. I glanced around the room and gathered myself again. Looking out the window, just to be sure, I decided I was letting the book get to my head. Of course there was nothing there, nothing to be afraid of. Just me, my cat, and the actors in the play of light on the wall. I simply chuckled at my fright, got comfortable, and read on. The man in black left the window with great speed and made his way to the back of the house. He had been here before. He examined the lock on the door with careful fingers and experienced eyes. The defense was no match for someone so cunning. Click. He crept like a ghost down the hallway towards the living room window he had stood at moments ago. Then, rushing in to strike his victim, he plunged the knife into their sternum, driving all of his might into the blow. I dropped my book and writhed in pain. I gawked at the handle of a knife sticking out of my chest. The light of the fire was beginning to blur as I felt the warm blood leave the solitude of my body. A hand crept slowly out from the shadows behind my couch and grabbed the knife handle. The mask connected to the handle, illuminated only by the third act of the fireplace, was wearing clothing that matched the darkest parts of his mind. But the expression on his face was quite the opposite of grim now. "10 minutes could be a lifetime." Harvey Alonzo knew something about lifetimes. He'd seen 1,000 snuffed out in the past month. His escape from New Haven Colony was selfish, abandoning the dying without a glance backward, but he wouldn't have the plague spread on his conscience, so he'd hardwired the blood sample system into his ship's control console. With an incubation period of a week, he could be infected and not know it. The blood analysis took 10 minutes. They were gut-wrenching, lonely minutes. He'd felt an ominous tickle in his throat that morning, and had spent the last hour convincing himself it was just the cargo ship's dry air. The green light blinked, and the digital voice gave the welcome words. "Sample clean. Piloting controls operational. Another sample will be required in 8 hours. He breathed a sigh of relief. "Lifeboat 1 launched," the digital voice announced. Harvey stiffened. That couldn't be right. "Lifeboat 2 launched. All lifeboats away." He sprinted to a porthole and gazed out. There, against a backdrop of unblinking stars, drifted both lifeboats. "It's a mistake!" he cried aloud. He was the only person aboard. No one else had access. Still, stowaways could be the only explanation. "No mistake, old-timer." Harvey felt an explosion at the back of his head and felt no more. "You didn't have to kill him, Kuntz." Markowitz eyed Harvey's body. "Or launch both lifeboats, for that matter. What if there's an emergency?" "Couldn't risk him getting away and sicken the interstellar police on us. There's a bounty on our heads. You pilot the ship, I'll do the thinking." Markowitz shook his head. Kuntz was a hard-headed bastard. It was 6 weeks to the nearest outpost, and they'd probably kill each other during that time. Markowitz wasn't surprised when they were at each other's throats only 8 hours later. "I'm telling you, the control console is locked," he explained to Kuntz. "It's demanding a blood sample." "So? Give it one." "I did. Look." Markowitz placed his finger over the sample pin and let it prick his finger. "Sample invalid," the computer announced 10 minutes later. Kuntz shoved Markowitz aside and gave his own offering to the machine. "Sample invalid," the computer repeated. "Crap. How do we fly this heap?" Kuntz whined. Markowitz stroked his chin. Maybe the old guy rigged it to his own blood. Kuntz gave him a bemused look. "Why are you standing around? Go get some." Markowitz trudged off to find the body. The blood was congealed, but he procured a suitable sample. He returned to the console and wiped it across the pin. The machine seemed to think for an extra long time. "Sample contaminated. Self-destruct sequence initiated. 10 minutes to detonation." Markowitz and Kuntz spent the end of their lives riding waves of panic that crested into shuddering acceptance. They had plenty of time to review their sins and burn with regret. 10 minutes could be a lifetime.